Welcome back everyone. Today we are going to talk about teacher-designed strategies. Agenda for today. After this lecture, please take quiz number 3. Throughout the semester, we've talked about standardized tests and other informal assessments such as observations and rating scales, right? Today, we'll talk about another type of informal assessment called teacher-designed assessment or tests. So we'll look at why teacher-designed tests are used and how to design these assessments for preschoolers and primary grade students. So why do we need to do teacher-designed assessment for our students? Teacher-designed assessment support other evaluation as informal assessment. So it makes all assessment more accurate and teacher can make accurate instructional decision. Teacher is the one who knows the child best in terms of the child's behavior and academic strength and weakness, right? So the informal assessment designed by the teacher can provide additional information for deciding whether to include more experiences, use review activities, skip planned activities, or conclude the current topic and move on to a new one. Also, the result from this informal assessment can support screening and diagnostic assessment data, so you can refer students for further evaluation. Standardized tests cannot be changed, but teacher design tests can be changed, right? And then it can be designed for specific students or for specific grade level by the teacher who know the children well. So teacher can evaluate students' progress more in depth. So with your teacher design assessment, basically you want to evaluate the current level of development before teaching and or you want to know if your student has mastered what you've taught. So those are the typical type of teacher design assessment that are used for preschooler and primary grade children. Tasks, oral responses, paper and pencil tests, printed test, activity with pictures and or word, marking responses like circling a response. So those are the examples. Teacher design assessment using tasks or oral responses can be conducted during a teaching activity as a part of learning or after learning to ask their comprehension, right? Or to ask if your student can recognize letter or not. You can have a flashcard as you can see in the picture. You can have that flashcard with letter you see and ask the child to pick what you say. Where's A, where's B, where's C, right? So student can point to it. So that can be a really simple teacher designed assessment. So there are different type of teacher designed tests that are used with different age groups. For preschool students, concrete material or concrete tests are often given and get their oral responses or physical responses like pointing or looking at something to indicate the correct answer, right? Primary grade students or children who can read now, the teacher design assessment begin to include printed test activity with pictures or some written words. And instead of physical or oral responses, the child can use a pencil with a printed test like worksheet, simple worksheet. But because they are beginning readers and writer, for the written test, teacher can include teacher can use circle or draw, right? Not to make them write whole words or sentences or fill in the blank, too many blanks. Example here shows a worksheet where beginning readers can match sequence pictures with sequence word by drawing lines between pictures and word. It's from your textbook. This is an example of like fill in the blank question test. So you see there is only one blank, and there are three like options, like choices. They can choose from one of them, and they can circle one of the answer, or they can write the answer in the blank by looking at the example. While standardized tests provide general information about student, the teacher design test can provide more detailed information about students' accomplishment in classroom in relation to specific classroom objectives. Teacher design tests can be used for placement and diagnosis like other assessment. Teacher design tests can be used as supplementary information to meet the purposes. In placement test, the student is assessed to determine appropriate instructional group for child, and in diagnostic test to figure out students' needs. It's to figure out students' needs and strength. We also talk about that all assessment are to evaluate students' progress, right? Teacher design assessment can be used in two types like other assessment, formative and summative assessment. So we can evaluate the student's progress. Formative is an ongoing test. You can administer the assessment you designed several times throughout the semester or school year. Summative is like a final test. So you can give a test after a completion of a unit of work or after a school year. Let's talk about how to design a test. The teacher design assessment should fit the learning objective. You want to test the student learning based on what you've taught, not what you have not taught, right? So there are several steps in test design you must follow, and the first one is setting a good objective. So when you do an assessment for your student, you should know what you want to measure, which means what you want to see from your student. And then you will set the mastery level so you can determine whether your student has learned that behavior or not. So first, you should determine instructional objective or learning outcome or behavior objective. They're all similar terminology. So as you see in this example, Hannah will throw and catch a ball with both hands 100% correctly by the end of semester. So once you set the behavior outcome or learning outcome like this, you can develop students' curriculum or lesson plan, and then you will teach that learning outcome, right? After you teach, you will evaluate students' behavior to see if your student can do that behavior, the target outcome, 100% correctly or not. So you're measuring students' progress. So now we will practice developing a learning objective or learning outcome. Now, I want to highlight one thing before we move on. Goal and learning objective are technically different. Goal is bigger term, like broad term. Objective is very specific, including several teachable components, and each goal can be benchmarked into several learning objectives. So let's talk about goal first. These are some goal areas. Examples of goal areas including communication, socialization, personal management, time management, self-advocacy, emotions, cognitive, vocational, maladaptive behavior. Again, these are just examples. Now objective. Under the goal area, you develop goal. Goal is usually annual goal, and then under the goal, you are going to develop several different objectives. And each objective, you must include these 5 elements because objective is teaching objective. So you are going to teach this behavior you set, and you are going to measure students' progress on this objective. So you must be clear and make it observable and measurable. In your objective, you must include these 5 elements: student target behavior, condition, criteria, mastery of behavior. Let's take a look at each element. Behaviors. You have to describe your target behavior you want to teach. Observable, measurable, and repeatable. Vague terms lead to confusion and to disagreement about whether a behavior is occurring. So, for example, understand the value of coin, developing something, increasing something. Those are not observable, measurable, repeatable behavior because they are still vague, and especially increased confidence. That's not something you can see, right? Increased confidence, it's more like progress of behavior. It's not a observable behavior at a moment, right? So you are going to use clear, countable, observable verb when you describe your behavior. We said that's operational definition. So example here, to count early, to say, to number, to point to walk, to underline. Those are the behavior you can see and you can count, right? So you will be really specific and then you are going to use clear verb. Unclear, to think, to understand, those are the example of unclear. Let's take a look at example of vague term and an observable term right now. So here we can compare what is vague and observable. As you can see, you need to operationalize your term very specific way. The first example, interact appropriately with peers. The term appropriately may be still vague, so you can describe like wave hi to peers when he entered the classroom in the morning. So you can specify the situation, events clearly. Instead of saying improve grooming, you can say wash his hands before meals, asks for assistance to tie his shoes, right? So you can be very specific and use clear verb. The next element is condition. Condition is a circumstance under which the skill will be displayed. So like you can describe the setting with like a specific materials or specific instruction, teacher's instruction. So you are going to describe when or where the behavior will happen. During math class, for example, or when given an array of manipulative or worksheet, the student will do blah blah blah. So the material can be a condition, and in cafeteria the setting can be condition. At the cashier register, that can be condition as well. You have to be precise exactly what you want to see the student does, no more no less. Okay. These are another example of condition. Teacher's verbal instructions like Sam, point to the little car. When teacher say this, the student will perform this blah blah behavior. Written instructions of format. When the worksheet says find the product, the child will do blah blah blah, right? Demonstration. Teacher's demonstration or material to be used. Given a worksheet with 20 single-digit addition problem, that can be condition as well. Like I said, setting or timing can be the condition too, in the cafeteria, on the playground, during math class, okay? And a manner of assistance as well, independently, without help, or with modeling prompts, or with 5 times of verbal prompts, the child will blah blah blah. So that can be condition as well. So you are going to specify when or where with what the behavior will happen, okay? That's condition. Criteria is really easy. It's all about numbers. So by having criteria, you can measure the student's behavior and you can determine the student has learned the behavior or not. So you can describe criteria in different way. The first one is accuracy of response, like frequency of occurrence. So 17 out of 20 correct respond with 80% accuracy on 80% of opportunity. 4 out of 5 triers correct. You can also use duration, the length of time the student performed the behavior, like for 20 minutes, within 2 weeks, or complete within 1 hour. So you can specify the time, the duration. Latency is similar to duration, but technically it's different. So the length of time that elapses before the student begins performing the behavior. So for example, when your students have autism, many children with autism, they're very like stubborn. So or students are having young students have issue with transition, right? You say time to go outside, and they never perform the behavior. Then you want to decrease the time between your instruction and their initiation of behavior, the time between that, right? So that's latency. So within 10 seconds after the flashcard is presented, the student will perform the behavior, or within 1 minute after verbal request, the child will perform the behavior. So you want to decrease latency. So you can determine the criteria, like there are so many ways to describe the number, but it's really depend on the behavior you want to see, right? You have to remember, don't say percentage of the time, like of what time. The word time is really vague. So when you describe your criteria, please do not use the word time. Instead, you can use percentage of opportunity, X out of X triers, with this much percentage accuracy. If you use percentage of the time in your objective, I'll be really sad, okay? Please do not use the word time in your criteria description. So the last one is mastery of behavior. If your student meet the criteria, let's say 100% correctly, then if your student meet the goal one day, and then the next day if your student go back to the lower level like 20%, and it is maintained under like 20% or 30% after your student meet 100% one day, then we cannot say the student learned that behavior, right? To consider the behaviors learned, we want to see that the behavior is maintained at the high level. So 100% correctly, 3 days in a row. Then we can say the student has learned that behavior, right? So that's mastery of behavior. So you can include 4 consecutive sessions for 3 out of 4 days on 3 consecutive trips to the bathroom. Then you can tell the student mastered that behavior, right? If the behavior is maintained at the high level, at the criteria level you set for a while. Or if you know that your student will need more time to get learn, like if you know the behavior will take time to get learned, then you can set a timeline, like by the end of semester or by the end of June 2020, 2022. So you can set the timeline so your student can gradually or slowly meet the goal, reach the goal by the time you set. So 2 ways. You can set the timeline, or you provide how many sessions the student will maintain the behavior at the high level, the level you set. Here, Angelica will throw and catch a ball with both hands 100% correctly, and in 4 consecutive play sessions. So in 4 consecutive play sessions, that's the mastery of behavior, okay? When you develop your objective, the 5 elements should be in one objective. That's very ideal. Student behavior, condition, criteria, master behavior should be in one sentence. Okay? Now I'm going to show you good example objective, and we are going to identify where each element is located. Now, let's take a look at the good example. My example is here. Given an array of photos of people, objects, and locations, Amanda will tell a 5-minute story to a class that makes use of a minimum of 7 items on 3 out of 5 days. I have students in orange, students Amanda, right? And then behavior in yellow, it goes here, right? Tell a 5-minute story to a class. Condition in blue goes here, give an array of to the locations. Criteria in green, a minimum of 7 items, right? And the last elements is mastery of behavior. In purple, it goes here 3 out of 5 days. Let's take a look at our second example. Student is here, Liam. Behavior will place the card on the appropriate category pile. Condition is where, when, or with what material. So it goes to here, really long, right? Okay. And the criteria is all about number. By having the criteria, you can determine if your student has mastered the behavior or not. So it's really important, right? 100% accuracy, that's the number. Mastery of behavior, it is to indicate the sustainability of acquired behavior, and 17 out of 20 triers. That's the mastery of behavior in this objective. This is the next example. Student Tom, behavior will complete all problems. Condition here, given to the sum, right? And then criteria, the number goes here, 90% accuracy. And mastery of behavior is here, 3 consecutive math sessions. So in one sentence, you see all 5 elements are there. So let's talk about the difference between goal and objective. I said earlier that goals and objectives are different, right? Let me read this statement first. Objectives should be derived from a set of educational goals that provide framework for the academic year. These goals should evolve from an accumulation of evaluation information and should be correlated with curriculum planning. Goals define the anticipated academic and social development for which the school will take responsibility. Thus, educational goals, which is long-term objectives, are statements of annual program intent, whereas behavior objectives, short-term or instructional objectives, are statements of actual instructional intent, usually for a 3 to 4 month period, quarterly, for individuals with disabilities. So generally, goals are generally described across states. So for example, in mathematics, you can say Aiden will master basic computation facts at the 1st grade level. You can tell it's very broad, it's not very measurable, right? But under this goal, your objective may look like this. Given a worksheet of 20 single-digit addition problem in a form 6 plus 2 and written instruction, find the sums. Aiden will complete all problems with 90% accuracy for 3 consecutive math sessions, right? So objective is really concrete, and your objective include 5. This objective include 5, the core elements, right? So that's the general understanding we see the difference between goal and objectives. The second step in test design is to construct a table of specifications. So you are going to do some analysis of the objective you just set. So analysis of the objective to determine the level of understanding is commonly done by constructing a table. We use Bloom's taxonomy. It's very classic. It was developed in 1956. It describes level of understanding in the cognition domain, ranging from the ability to recall information, which is knowledge level, to the highest level of understanding, which is evaluation. So you see different level of understanding in the left side, and descriptive terms for each level of understanding. So once you set your objective, you will do some analysis. So example objectives are listed in the left side, and then you will do some analysis. So you are going to specify the level of understanding in each objective you set. The third step, finally, you design formative and summative evaluations. So reviewing the concepts. Formative is ongoing test, so you can administer the assessment you design several times throughout the semester or school year. So you want to make sure your student has learned, mastered the skills you just taught, right? Summative is like a finer test. It's big test. We usually use standardized tests before semesters, before school year and after school year, so we want to compare. But you can also use teacher design tests as summative format. So you see this summative evaluation example on the right side, right? That's from your textbook. So you can give this test after completion of a unit of work or school year. The fourth step, since you know what you want to teach, the objective, and you developed the teacher design assessment already, now you can develop the lesson plan. And if some of your students need additional help after initial instruction and formative evaluation, you can provide correctives and enrichment environment or activities for the students. We are going to talk about these individualized instruction and enriched activity next semester in 508. So we're not going to talk about this. But you can develop the lesson plan. The fourth step look like this. This is just example. You can describe the objective, and then material, and then activity description. So you can have a lesson plan. There are several things for you to remember when you design and deliver the teacher design assessment. You want to ensure the quality of the teacher design assessment you design, right? So the tasks should be the same level of difficulty as a learning activity designed for learning objective, and have a variety of objective or concrete materials. So the assessment test can be administered several times when possible. administers tasks for a number of learning objectives, have materials for a number of tasks organized and available. For primary grade children, you can keep the list of items brief for matching exercises. I don't recommend you to use written tests for preschoolers, but primary grade children, they can write and read. They're beginning readers, right? Then you can have a fill in the blank question, but please have only one blank for each completion item. And be sure the test items match the child's reading level, and ensure response items for multiple choice type assessment have only one correct answer. Let's briefly talk about advantages and disadvantages of using teacher-designed assessment. Advantages: it has flexibility, so it can be changed to respond to needs of children, and it can fit students' progress. Whereas, if the teacher is not very good at this, then the test may be too bad, too long. It does not measure the student's progress well, right? And it can be time consuming to make one.